An elite and well-trained army from the Dragon Temple arrived at the ocean. They arrived directly before the god of war himself and stood ready to receive his orders. Feng gave a brief but firm order to return to Jiangdu City. As they flew away, he couldn't understand what had happened to Su Yun and who this man really was. Su Yun's fiancé, Wang Chen, did not expect his cousin to suddenly return to the capital and cause such a commotion. The girl couldn't understand how he guessed that they were accompanying his own brother. The young man explained that his older cousin's family, the Lin family, was considered one of the most prestigious families in the capital, and that he himself was one of the most talented members of the younger generation of the Lin family. When his older brother finally returned, Wang Chen immediately introduced him to his sister-in-law, Su Yun. They were very surprised when Feng suddenly appeared from behind them. Wang Chen said mockingly that now he understood where he had seen that face before, because it was the same loser who had disappeared for 5 whole years. But only his older cousin immediately understood why they were accompanied by fighter jets. Because before them stood the legendary god of war, before whom all the military leaders of the world must bow their heads. Wang Chen started yelling at him, unable to understand how he had the audacity to return after disappearing 5 years ago when the girl's father was diagnosed with cancer. He didn't even show up when the Su family fell into sharp decline. When Su Yun finally realized that Feng had really returned after so many years, she couldn't hold back her tears and ran away in despair. The guy added with a smirk that she didn't even want to see him now. At that moment, the brother began to bow respectfully to the god of war, greeting his majesty. But the god replied indifferently that he had simply made a mistake. Lin Yuan immediately understood that the god of war could not reveal his true identity like this. He immediately began to apologize and insist that he had simply made a mistake, just so as not to give him away. But Wang Chen did not understand how such a loser could be the god of war himself. Hearing this, the brother suddenly slapped him. The guy didn't understand why he was hit, but Mr. Lin firmly replied that from that moment on, his family would completely sever all ties with the Wang family. When Feng was driving, the girl quietly told him that 5 years ago, after he left Jiangdu, due to the illness of the head of the Su family, their influence began to decline rapidly, while the Wang family, on the contrary, rose very strongly. She added that Su Muqi's illness had miraculously receded, but his daughter, Su Yun, had fallen ill instead. It turned out to be not cancer, but another disease. And at that time, Wang Chen took her to all the famous doctors, after which she agreed to the engagement. But at that moment, Feng remembered that 5 years ago, he had made a promise to Mr. Su to leave the city and begin training with him in order to save the old man. He kept his word and healed him, but the Wang family brazenly took all the credit for themselves. The girl also said that she had discovered another fact. His sister-in-law often stayed at luxury hotels with Wang Chen and met there with an alchemist hired by Mr. Wang himself. The guy replied that he had never doubted Su Yun's loyalty. Later, the girl asked Mr. Yi where they were going next, and he replied that he wanted to go to the cemetery in the Xishan Mountains to visit his parents after 5 long years. But when they got there, they saw only ruins. The god of war immediately fell to his knees and began to ask his parents for forgiveness for not being able to properly care for their graves. He ordered to find out immediately who had done this, because he could not live under the same sky with a person who had done such a thing. And immediately after these words, blood began to flow from his mouth. The girl panicked, thinking that he had become so enraged that he had lost consciousness. She immediately called and ordered that a message be sent to the Dragon Temple that someone had desecrated the graves of Mr. Yi's parents and that he himself had fainted after seeing it. In despair, the girl cried out that she didn't care who the enemy was. She didn't care about his origins, connections, or power. The Dragon Temple had to kill this man. Meanwhile, all the elite masters of the Dragon Temple, at the level of warlord and above, gathered at Jiangdu International Airport. Li Jiangguang, the supreme commander of the Southern Region's military department, did not understand why they had returned to Jiangdu. But he was well aware of one thing. If they were all gathered together, they could easily destroy an entire small country. Plucking up his courage, he decided to approach the Black Dragon and ask him what was going on and why they had come. The Black Dragon did not stand on ceremony, and immediately said that the graves of the God of War's parents had been desecrated, and that he himself was lying unconscious, adding that they were all here to kill. Li Jiangguang muttered in horror that no one would dare to do such a thing to the graves of the war god's own relatives. But the young man rudely pushed the commander-in-chief away and warned him that this was a blood feud for all members of the Dragon Temple, and that he had better not interfere if he did not want to become their enemy. The commander hastened to assure them that he would not interfere with justice and, on the contrary, would help search for the criminal. But deep down, he already knew that today would make the capital extremely restless. At that time, in the luxurious VIP room of the Imperial Court nightclub, Mr. Chen told all the guests to enjoy themselves to their heart's content because he was paying for everything himself. The guests were very happy about this. The girl sitting next to him asked what the occasion was. Chen replied that his company had serious financial problems, but a wealthy man had offered him a deal worth 50 million just for him to dig up a few graves. One guy said that with such funding, his company would soon become a leader, and he and his friends would support him. The girl added that he was the real man of her dreams, and she was sure he would give them money. Mr. Chen immediately replied that everyone would receive an envelope today. At that moment, Ye Feng, Black Dragon, and the girl entered the room. The host of the party immediately asked who they were and who had let them in. The God of War calmly said that he had no more than a minute left to live, and therefore it was better to name the person who had ordered the hit right away. But Chen just smirked and said that he couldn't be intimidated by words or a knife. Then the Black Dragon did not hesitate and sharply stabbed his leg with a knife. Seeing this, Chen's guests began to scatter in horror, realizing that it was best not to interfere. The guy screamed in pain and immediately confessed that it was Wang Chen who had ordered him to do it, after which he began to beg for mercy so that he would not be killed. Ye Feng asked where the urns with his parents' ashes were, but the guy immediately began to say that Wang Chen had told him to hand them over, and began to ask for forgiveness because he had already sent someone to him. The Black Dragon asked the God of War Ye if he could add another 5 minutes to his life, and as soon as he gave his consent, the guy immediately began begging not to be killed. Meanwhile, at the Wang family residence, the master asked everyone to be quiet because a very important guest was about to arrive, and they should all go out and greet him. The guest immediately began to ask who this honored guest was that he was so concerned about, to which he replied that Lin Yanjiang himself from the Lin family in the capital would be arriving. All the guests immediately gasped in surprise, and began to say that the Wang and Lin families must have such a wonderful relationship if Lin Yanjiang himself was attending the engagement ceremony. Lord Wang began to think to himself mockingly that he himself had arranged this ceremony just so that everyone could see how Lin supported his family. Thanks to this, they would rise above the rest and become one of the leading families in the capital. Yanjiang had already arrived outside, and his brother immediately approached him to thank him for coming, but he just said yeah. He immediately asked them to come in. Then Ye Feng appeared and told them to come out, kneel, and accept their death. But Wang Chen ordered his guards to kill him, promising 5 million in advance to whoever could do it. A fight immediately broke out, in which Ye Feng's guards prevailed. Wang Chen began to yell at him to open his eyes, and that if he continued in the same vein, he would insult the Lin family. And then he would not even have time to look back before his severed head would be rolling on the ground. But they just ran up to the God of War with greetings. But the Wang family was puzzled as to how they knew Ye Feng. But Mr. Ye felt like he had seen them somewhere before. Mr. Lin greeted the respected God of War on behalf of the whole family, and said that today his father had sent him to this event to accompany and help him if he could. Ye Feng asked the Black Dragon to escort everyone out of the hall. Wang Chen couldn't believe that this guy was the God of War and told his uncle to take a closer look at him. Immediately after these words, the Black Dragon struck him. Wang Chen's father turned to Lin Yanjiang and said that this man had barged in on his son's wedding day and caused this scandal, and that he would not let him leave alive and asked him not to interfere, as this was his family's business. To which he replied that the Lin family also had something to do with it. Wang Sunyuan only began to threaten to call the elder Mr. Lin, but he did not mind the call, and he called so that the elder Mr. Lin would not think that he had no connections in his family. When he called his uncle, he said that his nephew had suddenly sided with the strangers who had broken in and caused a disturbance. He told Yanjiang to apologize to his relatives as soon as possible, to which Yanjiang replied that he was only following his father's orders. But then someone shouted into the phone that he should not disturb Mr. Lin, and since he had made that decision, no one in their family could afford to go against those strangers. And then Ye Feng decided to ask if he had said too much. Wang Sunyuan immediately realized that he had become a respected person, and that even the Lin family could not restrain him. He immediately began to bow to the God of War, saying that he would immediately break off his son's engagement to Su Yun and asking for mercy for his family. Wang Chen immediately began to think that one day he would destroy the main character and take everything away from him. But his father could only say that it was more important to save their lives now, and later he would give him any girl he wanted. But Ye Feng had no intention of sparing their family, and did not understand why he should agree to such a thing. Wang Sunyuan asked if he had gone too far, since it was just a girl, and there were thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, of such girls in the capital. But the God of War had only asked for the urns with his parents' ashes to be returned. The Black Dragon began to tell Wang Chen's father that he had hired someone to desecrate the graves of their master's parents, and that even God himself could not save him from the fate they had in store for him. After these words, Wang Sunyuan immediately struck his son and asked how he could have come up with such an idea, and that because of him, the entire Wang family would suffer. He fell to his knees and began to beg him to spare his son and give him a chance at redemption, saying that if he wanted to quench his thirst for revenge, he could take his life and take all of his family's accumulated wealth. But Mr. Ye thought that he wanted to offend him with these words and asked him if he really thought that he didn't have enough money, but he could only say that that wasn't what he meant. He immediately attacked his son and asked how he could have done such a thing and where he had put the urns, but he only handed him a note. Taking the note in his hands, he immediately offered Feng a deal, thinking that maybe then he would not take their lives, but he only asked why he should agree. Handing the note to the Black Dragon, Wang Sunyuan only said that it was related to the true cause of his parents' death. Hearing this, the god of war immediately ordered him to reveal the reason, to which he replied that he must give his word that he would not kill them, and he agreed. And Wang Sunyuan began to tell how 5 years ago an old man approached him and offered a deal. But before the deal, he made a bet with him and said that in less than a month, the family of the god of war would fall. Feng decided to ask what the old man looked like. He began to describe him, saying that he was tall, gray-haired, but with a well-preserved face, and he constantly fiddled with blood-colored Buddha beads in his hands. The main character immediately understood who Wang Sunyuan was talking about, but he understood why it was him. Feng was angry. He didn't understand why the man had done this because now it turned out that he had been leading him on for 5 whole years. Mr. Wang decided to ask if he knew him, but he only replied that it had nothing to do with him, and that he should continue his story. He went on to say that his family, the Ye family, originated from the personal physician of the emperor of the previous dynasty, that his father had been a brilliant doctor during his lifetime, and that rumors still circulated about their acupuncture techniques, which were shrouded in mystery. He couldn't believe this old man who claimed that such a powerful family would be gone in less than a month. However, Feng's father made a mistake and gave the wrong diagnosis, which led to the patient's death. Then rumors surfaced that his father's clinic was selling fake medicines. Shortly after that, his father's clinic closed down for good, and he himself was even sent to prison. Later, Wang Sunyuan asked him if he was behind the downfall of the Ye family. He did not admit it, but he did not deny it either, saying only that everything should take its course. After he healed Sumuchi, he attributed this help to his family, the Wangs, which allowed him to get closer to the Su family. As a result, after some time, his family managed to invade the Su family's market and take control of their assets. He immediately assumed that the death of Feng's parents must have something to do with this old man. Otherwise, he would not have asked him to deliver the urns containing his parents' ashes. The note said to send the urns to a specific location. Feng immediately recognized the old man's handwriting and immediately asked Wang Sunyuan where he was. As his son said, he simply asked him to bring the urns to the specified location. And then the god of war ordered the Black Dragon to deal with them. Mr. Wang shouted that he had promised not to kill them, but he only said that he had promised, without mentioning his men. As he left, Feng began to think about the tragedy that had befallen his family 5 years ago. Could it be that the old man had a hand in it, meaning he was the murderer? The girl ran up to the god of war because she had been told that Sumuchi had been taken to the hospital again, and his daughter-in-law had rushed there, so he immediately ordered them to go. Meanwhile, at the hospital, Su-yun asked Dr. Yang about her father's condition, to which he replied that Mr. Su had developed a life-threatening blood tumor on the back of his head, and unfortunately, could soon be in critical condition. The girl began to beg him to save her father, but the doctor only said that such an operation could only be performed by their head, but he could put in a good word for them and he would probably take on her father's case. But he didn't want to bother the head for nothing, so the girl asked how much money he needed. Dr. Yang said he didn't need money, he wanted something else. After these words, the girl hit him and told him to take his hands off her. Then he asked how she dared to raise her hand against a respected doctor, grabbed her, and said that he would immediately write a statement about her, and she would go to prison. At that moment, Feng entered the room and asked who was going to send his fiancé to prison. Dr. Yang said that she had hit him and that it was punishable by law, but the god of war said that he was sure that his fiancé had raised her hand against a person only because he really deserved it. Su-yun's father immediately said that he had heard everything and that he had used his life as an excuse to try to defile his daughter's body. To which Feng replied that he must be tired of living. The doctor told him not to come near him, but he just said that he wouldn't die so easily and hit him so hard that he flew out of the ward. Already in the hallway, he was screaming that they were killing him. Yang yelled at him not to come near him, because his father was the deputy head of the city administration, to which the main character replied that he wanted to see which of them would die first. After that, doctors gathered around the doctor. They were all curious to know who had beaten him up so badly. They decided to take him to the emergency room first, then call the head of the hospital, and then report it to the police. Ting asked if he wanted her to take care of it. From the ward, they heard Suyun's voice shouting at her father not to scare her like that, because he was unconscious. The main character asked his assistant to lock the doors because he needed to work with needles. Meanwhile, in the hallway, the doctor told the head that this was beyond the pale, that it was attempted murder, and that if they did not punish the culprit, who would dare to wear a medical gown in the future? But passing by the door of the ward, the head saw the long-lost technique of Tai's divine needles. The doctor suggested that the head break down the door, to which he replied that no one would enter until he gave permission. He thought that the doctor had completely lost his mind and that he needed to tell Dr. Yan's father everything. As soon as he left, he immediately called the gentleman and told him that something terrible had happened at the hospital, as a result of which his son had been seriously injured. After hearing this, Dr. Yang's father shouted that if he couldn't take care of his subordinates, then he was unworthy of his position and would come right away. Meanwhile, in the ward, Suyun did not understand who this woman was and why she was looking at Ye Feng with such a caring gaze. Seeing this, he realized that she was jealous and that she couldn't just betray him. As soon as the main character finished, he turned to his fiancé and said that her father would be fine. He just needed to rest a little, and he would be back on his feet very soon, and told Ting to open the door. After the girl opened the door, the chief ran in and asked the god of war to take him as his disciple, saying he was ready to agree to any conditions. Seeing this, the doctors did not understand why Liu Yunhong was asking to become his disciple, because he was always incredibly confident when it came to his medical skills. But Ye Feng simply said that he was no longer suitable as a disciple. But Liu Yunhong clung to the main character's leg and begged him to take him as a disciple. Seeing this, the doctors did not understand how the head of one of the country's greatest doctors could bow his head to a young man who was unknown to anyone. But the god of war found a compromise and suggested that they exchange experiences. Meanwhile, Dr. Yang's parents had already seen their son in the hallway, and his father ordered that the person who had beaten him be brought to them immediately. The doctor who had called his father immediately pointed to the main character and said that he had wanted to grab him right after the incident. But Director Liu had stopped him and forbidden him from entering the ward. His father turned to Liu Yunhun and said that he was probably tired of being the head of the hospital, to which he replied that the case of his son's beating was not so clear-cut, and that he would not judge who was guilty and who was not until the circumstances were clarified. At that moment, the young man's enraged mother rushed toward Ye Feng, saying that he would pay for this with his life. But Ting prevented her from attacking the god of war. After that, the deputy head of the city administration ordered them all to be arrested. Tin didn't think that the guy's father could do whatever he wanted on her family's Qin territory. After she said that, he wondered if she was really from the Qin family of the North Shore. But Yang's enraged mother said it didn't matter what family she was from, because they had beaten their son. He ordered the patrolmen to draw their weapons, which they did. Su Yun stood in front of Ye Feng because she couldn't let him die. But he just politely told her not to worry, and that he would take care of it himself. Ting turned to Yang Hemming and told him that if he did that, her Qin family would wipe them out, and ordered them to lower their weapons. To which he replied that his wife was right, and why should he grovel before them if his son would never be the same again? He didn't care that she was from the Qin family. Nothing would save him from a bullet today. After these words, he immediately ordered the patrol to kill the god of war right away. Then a black dragon entered the chamber with his men and said that they were completely insane if they wanted to kill the Lord of the Dragons. Then the old man saw the people from the Dragon Temple and didn't understand why they were here. They should be on the battlefield, so why had they come here? While he was wondering if this young man was really the Dragon Lord, Ye Feng told Su Yun that she had misheard. After that, the main character looked at the black dragon, and it took him only one glance to realize that he had made a mistake. The old man immediately realized that this was the very Dragon Lord that the whole capital was talking about, whom even the most influential families did not want to cross, and he immediately changed his mind about pointing his weapon at him. He immediately ordered the patrol to lower their weapons, but Hemin's wife immediately said that he had lost his mind because she did not understand why he had ordered them to lower their weapons since he was a murderer. They were all real criminals, and they could not just let them go. After her words, he hit her and ordered her to shut up if she didn't want her whole family to be killed. After that, he bowed his head to Ye Feng and said that he was sure that Yang Jun fully deserved what he had done to him and apologized for the whole circus he had caused. But he only replied that the state would not have created laws if they could be circumvented with mere apologies. After that, the old man fell to his knees before him and began to beg for forgiveness, saying that he had done something foolish and asking him not to kill them. But the god of war told Tin that she could deal with it herself. Then the girl approached Deputy Yang and said that he had behaved so proudly and imperiously that she wanted to know what good he had done for their city during all these years of hard work. The old man immediately realized that it was all over, and that his end had come. After all this, Liu Yuanhong decided to dismiss Li Yonghui and said that he would immediately instruct competent people to start investigating his activities in their hospital. The main character asked Liu to take care of his father-in-law and said that he would wake up by tomorrow morning, so there was no need to disturb him for a while. He promised to provide his father-in-law with the best care. The main character immediately turned to Su Yun and said that he would take her home and doctor. Liu would take care of her father, so she didn't need to stay at the hospital overnight, because he understood that she was quite tired after this day, and she also needed to get some rest, to which she agreed. As soon as they left the hospital, someone called Su Yun and told her that the Wang family was no longer there, which the girl couldn't believe. But Yue continued, saying that this news had upset her so much that she couldn't believe her ears, and that her dreams of a luxurious life as the Wang family's daughter-in-law had been shattered. But the girl didn't listen to her any further. She only thought about how the Wang family had been destroyed immediately after Ye Feng's return, and whether this was too much of a coincidence. She remembered that Liao Yue had decided to come to her to laugh at her situation and brag about her new boyfriend. But then the main character arrived at the Su family residence early in the morning, just to bring her something for breakfast. And then this girl arrived, immediately noticed the god of war, and began to wonder who this guy was, and why she was constantly surrounded by handsome men. She immediately approached her sister and said that she didn't expect this from her, because she had just broken up with Wang Chen yesterday, and today she already had a new boyfriend. She thought it was a little promiscuous, but told her not to be offended. But Ye Feng would not call it honesty. Su Wen just laughed at the guy's words, and didn't understand when he had become so skilled with his tongue. The girl's sister immediately turned to her and said that she had always said that she had terrible taste in men, and that he looked like an old man who didn't understand jokes. To which the main character replied that he was ready to be a grumpy old man and scold her, asking why she wore such short dresses with such a revealing neckline, as if she loved the attention of men. The girl got angry at his words, but he just said that he was only joking and that she didn't understand jokes. After that, she immediately turned her attention to the guy and told him to hurry up and meet her best friend. As soon as he saw Su Yun, he immediately thought she was beautiful. Seeing how her boyfriend was staring at her friend, she immediately told him about it, but he only replied that she wanted him to meet her. Su's friend immediately began to introduce her to her boyfriend, saying that until yesterday she had been engaged to Wang Chen from the Wang family, but unfortunately they had fallen on hard times. But she had not wasted any time and had already found herself a new husband. For some reason, this car seemed very familiar to the main character, and he asked if he was sure it was his. But Chen Yongjian became visibly nervous and replied that it was his. But the girl immediately started yelling at the guy, saying that just because he couldn't afford such a car himself didn't mean that others couldn't. Yi Feng told Su Yun that this guy was not right for her at all, not only because he argued with girls like that, but also because he openly hated rich people, and she would not find happiness with such a person. The girl said that she believed Mr. Yeah, and that he would not have said such a thing if he were not sure, which meant that the car really did not belong to her boyfriend. And then the guy realized that she hadn't changed at all in those 5 years, because in the past, she always stood up for him during verbal altercations. Lo Yue'er started yelling at the girl, saying that she had traded her for some guy, and that she would immediately tell all their mutual friends about how she changed boyfriends like gloves. After her words, the main character hit the girl in the face. Ye Feng said that if she didn't learn to keep her mouth shut soon, he would rip it out. His gaze sent a chill down her spine. Then Ting appeared and told Mr. Ye that she had brought his car and asked if he and his fiancé wanted to go shopping together. She immediately saw her car and didn't understand what it was doing there. The god of war asked if she had been driving this car yesterday when she picked him up at the airport, to which the girl replied that she didn't understand how it got there because she had left it at the repair shop last night. He immediately pointed at the guy and said that he claimed the car was his. The girl decided to call the repair shop and ask what was going on. After that, the guy immediately fell to his knees and begged her not to call because he would lose his job, and said that he had taken her car because he wanted to check if everything was in order after the repair, and he apologized profusely. Su Yun's friend attacked the guy because he told her that he worked as a manager at Yuhua, but he denied everything and said that he was just a car mechanic. The main character told Ting to order the security guards to remove them from there because they were a nuisance. The girl turned to the gentleman because she had received a tip about the old man he was looking for. He immediately asked if she knew where he was, but she only knew that according to the available information, he should be at the Taoist temple on Ling Mountain. The guy wanted to know if this was just a guess or the exact answer. The girl asked for an hour to find out all the details, but he gave her 20 minutes. Ting began to recall how 5 years ago, when Ye Feng had just joined the Su family, he was only an obedient son-in-law, but now he had become a true lord. A few minutes later, she said that the information had been confirmed, and the Black Dragon had already sent his men to surround the Taoist temple where the old man was hiding. But Su Yun was curious about who this old man was that he was looking for, to which the guy replied that he was an old acquaintance with whom he needed to talk face to face. He said he would go there and ask the girl to take his bride to the hospital a little later, as his father-in-law should have woken up by then. Mrs. Su decided to ask what Ye Feng had been through during those 5 years, and where he had been, to which she only replied that Mr. Yi had left the capital at that time, partly for her sake. Ting began her story 5 years ago. When her father was diagnosed with cancer, a mysterious old man approached Mr. Ye and said he could cure her father, but in return asked to make a deal with them. But she did not understand what kind of deal he was talking about. Just then, another car crashed into the assistant's car, preventing her from finishing her story. But as soon as the man got out of the car, she didn't understand where he had come from. Meanwhile, the god of war had already arrived at the Taoist temple of Peak Ling, and asked the Black Dragon if he had left the temple, to which he replied that he was still inside. Going inside, he ordered him to wait outside. He understood that if the old man decided to kill him, even the Black Dragon would not be able to stop him, so it was better for him to just stand outside. The Black Dragon turned to his people and said that the Lord of the Dragons had ordered them not to go inside, but in case of danger, they were obliged to save him even at the cost of their own lives. Entering the temple, he was glad to be there and immediately asked how the old man was doing. But when he approached him, he saw that his heart had been pierced. He immediately ran to him to heal him, for the divine needle of Tai can even raise the dead. But he only pushed his hand away and said that he could not save himself, let alone the main character. After that, Ye Feng said that he could not believe that it was he who had killed his family, and promised to kill the one who had done this to the master, and the old man told him that he had been artificially sustaining his life all this time just to tell him something. And he began his story, explaining how in ancient times, medicine was divided into 2 main branches: divine healers and demonic healers. Divine healers were always in demand among emperors and important people, while demonic healers, on the contrary, were always belittled, and attempts were made to eradicate them. He then continued that 5 years ago, the Yi family had been targeted for destruction precisely because they were descendants of the branch of demonic healers, but the main character did not know this and asked if it was really the divine healers who had attacked them. The old man said that the god of war understood everything correctly, and that his family had been hiding from their gaze for a long time, but his father showed the world the techniques of demonic healers in order to save as many human lives as possible. Naturally, the divine healers immediately found out about this, and then his father asked him to hide Ye Feng somewhere in order to save at least his life. But the main character still did not understand why he had helped the Wang family, and ordered them to bring the ashes of his parents. But he did not understand what other Wang family there was, because he had never been in contact with them. Because for the last 5 years he had been too busy with divine healers, so he had no time for worldly affairs, and the same applied to the ashes of his parents. He then continued that he had come to the capital only because someone had warned him that the divine healers had set their sights on the god of war. Immediately after the master's story, the young man said that if things continued this way, he would indeed die. But he only said that his time had come, took out the bloody beads, and said that they were the treasure of the demonic healer's branch, and now they belonged to him, calling him a useless disciple, because the battle between the divine healers and them had already begun, and he was the only heir to the demonic healer's branch, and had a great responsibility. And finally, the old man said that the only thing he regretted at the end of his long life was that he would no longer be able to protect him. But Ye Feng shouted only one word, "Master!" because he couldn't believe that he was no longer alive. Hearing the cry, the Black Dragon and his people rushed into the temple, thinking that something had happened to the Dragon Lord. As soon as he saw what had happened, he asked what they should do. The main character only said that his master must have been very tired in recent years, because he was a great and noble man. But because of him, he had to give up a peaceful life and plunge into war. After that, he said that this place was perfect for his generous master and ordered him to be buried here, so that these green mountains and blue skies could keep him company in the afterlife. But he was interrupted by a phone call, and he saw that it was Xin Ting. He picked up the phone and heard a man's voice telling him that he had 20 minutes, after which he would set fire to the Su family residence, and that it was up to him whether his loved ones would survive or not. As soon as they finished talking, the main character was sure that this was the man who had killed his parents and destroyed his family, and now he was targeting Su Yun and his younger sister Ting. After that, he asked the Black Dragon to lend him a knife. Then he began to think that this man knew no mercy if he said he had 20 minutes and couldn't be late. As soon as he arrived at the Su family residence, the man just smirked and said how punctual he was. Then Ye Feng ran up and hit him. The main character told him to call his master, because he didn't want to waste time on some guy. Well, he said that he had left a long time ago, but asked him to stay here to give him something. And the main character immediately asked where he had gone and what he had given him. But he didn't know where he had gone, and what he had to deliver was in the trunk. As soon as he delivered everything, he asked if he could leave, to which Ye Feng replied that he truly believed he would let him go. But the man only said that he was just a messenger and that he had defeated him. He had delivered everything, so why continue this feud? Then he asked where his loved ones were, to which Ye Feng replied that they were inside, safe and sound. As soon as the main character saw that their breathing was steady and there were no visible injuries, he immediately calmed down. The guy asked if he could wake them up, but he just told him to leave. The god of war immediately called the Black Dragon and told him to organize a search of the car in front of Su's residence. When he opened the box, he didn't understand what was going on because it contained gifts from his parents, all of which had disappeared when someone destroyed his family 5 years ago. Looking closely into the box, he saw his parents' urns, but when he opened them, he saw that they were empty. He immediately began to think that they were just empty urns. They were so clean, as if there had never been any ashes inside them. He wondered what this could mean, as if his parents were still alive. When Tin woke up, she immediately saw Mr. E and ran to him to tell him that the man who had captured them looked exactly like his father in the photo on his parents' gravestone. Hearing this, he wondered if he was really still alive. Then why did he kill the master? And he didn't understand why he had been pretending to be his master for the past 5 years, supporting the Wang family and trying to destroy the Su family. After that, the girl asked if it could be that his parents were still alive, but he was no longer sure of anything. At that time, he was too depressed, so their friends took care of the funeral, and he only saw their funeral urns being buried. Tin suggested finding out who exactly had organized the funeral, and then they could question them one by one, and ultimately find out the truth. He agreed, trusting her on this. Ye Feng went into the house and woke Su Yun. As soon as she saw that he had returned, she immediately told him that someone had broken in. He began to calm the girl down, saying that everything was fine and that he had already left, and asked if she had managed to get a good look at him. But she hadn't, because she had lost consciousness before she could see him. She began to ask if the younger Ting was okay. The guy immediately said that she was fine and that he would drive her to the hospital himself. Passing by the door, she said that she missed her mother a little, who had become very angry when she found out about her engagement to the Wang family and had moved to her grandfather's house in Jiangdu. After that, the main character said that he was back, so everything would be fine, and suggested stopping by Jiangdu for a little family reunion. He was sure that her mother would not refuse to return home after that, to which the girl agreed and wanted to stay there for a few days. After all, she had not seen her grandparents in a long time. Back at the hospital, Ting told Mr. E that, according to her information, most of those involved in his parents' funeral had died under mysterious circumstances. Only one person was still alive, and he lived in Jiangdu, but she had not yet determined his exact location. The young man asked if she would be able to find out everything in 3 days, to which she replied yes, and asked what he himself thought about his parents. But he said that he wasn't sure about anything right now. But if the divine healers were really involved in the commotion surrounding his family 5 years ago, then they could very well have orchestrated this whole series of coincidences. Tin agreed that if his parents were alive, they would not have killed their friends to silence them. The main character said that modern medicine allows people to freely change their appearance, and ill-wishers could easily disguise themselves as his master to help the Wang family and destroy the Su family, and then use his father's appearance to lure him into their trap. He then added that the only survivor from Jiangdu was now a priority for them, as he was the only one who could help them get to the truth. As soon as he entered the ward, Su Yun asked what had happened and why the head of the family had called him, to which he replied that he had said he was currently at a clinic outside the city examining a seriously ill patient and had asked for help in making the correct diagnosis. Then the girl said that since even Dr. Liu couldn't diagnose the patient correctly, the situation must be very serious and he should help him after all. The guy said he would ask his younger sister Ting to take the girl to Jiangdu and that she shouldn't worry. He would follow as soon as he helped Dr. Liu. He told Ting to go to Jiangdu and asked her to take care of his fiancé. When he arrived at the gate of the district hospital in the Jiang'an district, he was met by the head of the hospital, who who apologized in advance for taking up his precious time. But he simply said that he didn't want to waste any time and wanted to see his patient immediately. One of the doctors said he thought someone important was coming, but it was just some young guy. Head Liu turned to Ye Feng and told him that they had initially diagnosed him with a myocardial infarction with a number of complications, but then other organs began to fail for no apparent reason. He said that he would examine him right away and try to save his life if possible, after which he thanked him. After the main character's words, the young man asked what he meant by try, implying that if the patient died, he would not be to blame, and whether he was worthy of being called a doctor after such words. Hearing this, Chief Liu turned to Chief Jiang and said that he had asked Dr. Yi to come here specifically to help him with the patient, but instead of expressing gratitude, his subordinate was being rude to him. He immediately told the god of war not to take his subordinate's words to heart because he was a rather straightforward person and said whatever was on his mind, to which the main character replied with a smile that he should not worry about it, because he did not take his words seriously. He was not his father to deal with the problem of his bad manners. The guy asked who he had called ill-mannered and told him to repeat it to his face. Ye Feng replied mockingly that then he would have to call him father. He then added that he had asked him to repeat it, and he had made it clear that his rudeness was his father's problem, not the protagonist's. Chief Jiang told Ding Hua that if he didn't stop, he would kick him out of the chamber. After the Dragon Lord took out his huge arsenal of needles, the old man noticed it and said what exquisite silver needles they were. Seeing this, Ding Hua laughed and asked who in their time relied on Chinese medicine, and said that he was just a common swindler, nothing more. If he could cure their patient with this, then he was ready to eat all of his outdated needles. And Ye Feng hoped that he would keep his word. With just one wave of his hand, he brought the patient out of a coma. All the doctors in the ward did not understand how he had brought the patient out of a coma with just 3 needles. After the shock, they saw that the patient's face looked much better. Chief Jiang began to think that the patient had indeed regained consciousness. But such stimulation of the cardiovascular system turned out to be only a superficial effect. But his thoughts were interrupted by what he saw. He was holding the needles with his key. After that, he immediately plunged back into his thoughts and realized that with such skills, this young man could become famous as the most talented doctor in the whole country in just a couple of weeks. And now he understood why Liu Yuanhong was so polite to him. When he woke up, the patient asked what had happened to him, but the main character ignored the question and immediately asked him if he had recently taken any weight loss drugs. The guy replied that he had and asked how he knew about it, but Ye Feng simply advised him not to touch such drugs again because they had almost cost him his life. The patient was stunned by the news that he had nearly died, and the Dragon Lord said he would write him a prescription for the necessary medicine to take in the mornings for 5 days, and he would recover. Chief Jiang was lost in thought again, because their hospital had used all of its latest diagnostic equipment on this patient. But they still couldn't figure out the cause of his multiple organ failure, and he realized that it was all because of the weight loss pills and just a few needle pricks, and he was stunned by this. The patient was very grateful to the main character. Then he turned to Dr. Ding and asked if he remembered his promise. As soon as he started to say who he was, Chief Jiang interrupted him, telling him to apologize to Dr. Ye immediately. But Ye Feng just said to forget about it. He didn't need his apology, especially since he wasn't planning on accepting it. Then he said that a civilized person wouldn't bite back at a dog that bit his hand. Then he turned to Head Liu and said that since they had dealt with the patient, he would leave. Ding Hua thought about how he had come to Jiang'an, a place foreign to him, and immediately turned up his nose. And he would not just silently endure such humiliation. He promised himself that he would knock the ground out from under his feet. But his thoughts were interrupted by a phone call. Picking up the phone, he heard someone tell him that if he wanted to destroy Ye Feng, luckily for him, they had a way to help him do it. At that moment, at the hotel, the Black Dragon told the Dragon Lord that they had been closely monitoring the courier boy he had let go, but he had not yet made contact with the person pulling the strings. However, the protagonist had expected this, and said that whoever it was, he was very cautious. The guy gave the documents to Ye Feng and said that this was all the information about his parents' last surviving friend. Younger Ting did a great job, but the god of war did not think that this man would have such a high position. The Black Dragon suggested that the Lord kidnap him, as it would be easier to interrogate him that way. But the Lord replied that this was out of the question, because the man who ruled everything from the shadows was closely watching their actions, and if they carelessly approached their target, they would surely fall into the trap he had prepared. And then he realized that if the only person who knew the truth about what had happened to his parents died, he would remain in the dark forever. After that, he came up with a plan and whispered it to the Black Dragon, who asked if he was sure about it. because they would attract unnecessary attention. But he was absolutely sure of it, because the bigger the scene, the better for them. And if they did so, his connection with the last survivor would not look deliberate, which meant that they would not arouse the suspicion of the puppet master. After that, the Black Dragon said that Ye Feng was simply a genius. He would never have thought of that. Then the main character said that the Qin family was now the most influential family in Jiangbei, so the minor details could be left to the younger Ting. He was sure that they could handle it, so the guy reassured him and told him not to worry, and asked him to leave the implementation of his plan to them. The next day, at the entrance to the hotel, the police surrounded Ye Feng and said that they were arresting him in accordance with the law and asked him to surrender without resistance. The main character asked which district they were from, and one of them replied that they were from the Jiang'an District Police Department, and that if he had any more questions, he could ask him. Then he asked what he had done wrong. The police officer asked if it was true that he had treated a patient at their local hospital yesterday. The Dragon Lord confirmed this, and the officer said that the patient had been pronounced dead at 4 o'clock that morning, and they suspected it might be related to his treatment methods. In addition, he was treating patients without a medical license, and they were obliged to arrest him until all the circumstances of the case were clarified. But the main character understood that this was impossible, because he had checked his condition and prescribed the medicine he needed, so he couldn't have died a natural death. Probably, someone who was watching him had decided to frame him in this way. The police officer ordered him to put the phone down immediately. After that, Ye Feng looked at him sternly and only said who he was to give him orders. Seeing his gaze, the man was terrified by his pressure. Picking up the phone, he heard that Liu Yunhong had called him and said that yesterday's patient had died this morning. Hearing this, he said that he already knew about it, that he was surrounded by police who were trying to arrest him. But Chief Liu did not understand what he had to do with the patient's death, and said that he would call Jiang Livan right away, because they had a whole crowd of witnesses, and they could all confirm that he had saved the patient's life yesterday. After the conversation, he told the police officer not to worry, because he would not cause them any trouble and would obediently follow them. At that time, in the office of the head of the health department of the Jiang'an district, the man did not understand what was going on in the hospital of the head of Jiang, because the surveillance cameras turned off at the very moment when his patient died. He himself did not understand what had happened because yesterday the skilled doctor, Ye, had cured this patient. The man realized that Director Zhang was talking about Ye Feng, because Dr. Ding Hua had just asked his deputy to check the documents of this fake doctor, and he asked if he knew that he was practicing medicine without a license. He yelled at Zhang Livan, asking how he could entrust a patient to a person without medical education, because it was blatant stupidity. But Zhang began to justify himself, saying that it was not he who brought him in, but Dr. Liu Yuanhong, and he had nothing to do with it. Then he remembered that Ye Feng had prescribed some Chinese medicine to the patient, and perhaps that was the reason for the patient's death. The gentleman said that he would immediately call the capital's health department and ask them to investigate the case, and if any new information came to light after the autopsy, he should be informed immediately. At that time, Ye Feng was sitting tied up in the interrogation room of the district police station. A police officer came to him and said that someone wanted to talk to him. He had expected it to be him, but the guy didn't understand how he had guessed. And the main character said, would he have allowed himself to be captured if he wasn't sure that he would show up? After he broke free from the ropes, he said that no butterfly would refuse to look at such a bonfire. Seeing this, the guy started to run away, but Ye Feng managed to catch him. The god of war asked where that man was now, but the guy didn't know where he was and said that he was just a messenger. Had Mr. Yi forgotten that? The Lord said that last time he had left him a rather interesting gift and asked what he had brought this time. And the guy said fearfully that he had to deliver a message. Hearing this, he threw him to the floor. He ordered him to say what he was supposed to deliver. And after clearing his throat, he said that the customer had told him that if he delivered the blood-colored beads, the patient's death would have nothing to do with him. The guy added that otherwise, he would not be able to get out of this situation. Even his high status and special position would not save him. And in the end, they would not turn a blind eye to the death of a person in the hospital. He asked him to think about it. Realizing that he needed his beads, he said that his life was still more precious to him than these beads, and agreed to give them up. The guy told him to give them to him right away. But the main character refused and said that if he wanted his beads, he should come and get them himself, and he would wait. Hearing this, he said that he was not in a position to make demands, and added that he should think about it again. But Ye Feng decided to ask if human life meant nothing to them, and if they had killed an innocent boy just to corner him. The guy said that sometimes people are scarier than demons themselves, because neither he nor his client had killed the guy. After hearing this, the main character thought that he didn't believe his words. But if we assume that this is true, then only one person comes to mind who is capable of doing such a thing. Sitting back down on the chair, he continued to think that this mysterious client who needed his master's beads was definitely not his father, and now he understood why he had allowed only the younger Tin, who had only seen his father in photographs, to see him, because Su Yun could easily expose him, so he knocked her out first. Meanwhile, Chief Liu Yuanhong yelled at Chief Zhang and asked why no one cared about the fact that the surveillance cameras in the hospital weren't working at the time of the patient's death. But on the other hand, they were so eager to jump on the autopsy results. Did they really want to find anything to frame Dr. E? After that, Chief Zhang showed the documents to Chief Liu and said that he could familiarize himself with the autopsy results. The patient died of acute renal failure caused by drug poisoning, and its main active ingredient was musk. But Liu Yanhong couldn't believe it, so Zhang Laiwan added that musk was the main ingredient in the medicine that the so-called Dr. E had prescribed yesterday. As soon as he asked why he was slandering a righteous person, Director Zhang flew into a rage and said that he would not get away with it either. He maliciously said that they had already reported this to the capital's health department, and that it would not be long before his egregious mistake became public knowledge, and the same would happen to Dr. E. Picking up the phone, Head Liu saw that it was already in the news, and realized that he was to blame for tarnishing Dr. E's reputation. Sitting in his office, the guy watched the news about the fake Dr. E because it sounded funny to him and, in his opinion, was just right for a guy with an inflated ego. When they went outside, Chief Jiang and the guy didn't understand why the army had surrounded their hospital. Meanwhile, in the conference room of the district municipality, Commander Li said that because of their decision, their entire Jiang'an district could be in danger, because even he was like a speck of dust compared to the guy they had arrested. After his words, the man became nervous and began to justify himself by saying that the head of the health department had insisted on his arrest. Then he asked where they were holding him, to which he replied that he was at the main district office. He then ordered them to be taken to the head of health, Ding Qisheng, and told them to go there immediately, as they had to go to him together. Upon arriving at the district police station's interrogation room, Li Jiangguang, Commander-in-Chief of the Southern Military Department, introduced himself and greeted the god of war. But Ye Feng was not impressed by his arrival and, yawning, thought to himself, "So this is the famous Commander-in-Chief Li." Then he said that the god of war Ye could just call him Li Jiangguang, or even just Junior Li. Then he told the god of war Ye that Junior Li had come to take him away from here, to which Ye asked where he would take him. After that, he asked where he would like to go, but the main character said that he did not want to leave, so he would stay here. He added that he was an arrested suspect, so he had to wait for their verdict. Li Jiangguang told the god of war Ye that they would not judge him, but he replied that everything must be done according to the law, and that he would even accept the death penalty. After that, he ordered the head of the department to come to him immediately. As soon as he approached, he asked who had ordered him to arrest the respected god of war, and ordered him to answer quickly if he did not want to lose his job. Then he asked how, with such a spirit, he could have become the head of their district department, and ordered him to be dragged away from there, because he was fired. Hearing this, the main character told him to talk to the patrolman who had actually arrested him, because he should be aware of what was going on. Approaching the young man, he asked if he had brought the respected god of war to their district. The young man confirmed this and said that he was not the one who initiated the arrest, but only carried out the order signed by the head of their department. The Dragon Lord said that he would like to know who exactly had informed him of this, and the guy said that it was Dr. Ding Hua from their local hospital. Hearing his name, Ye Feng realized that his guesses were correct. Li Jiangguang gave him 20 minutes to bring this Ding Hua here. At that moment, the guy in the office didn't understand why there was still no news from them, because he had said that the verdict would be announced today. But the police had already entered and told him that he was under arrest and not to resist. As they handcuffed him, Ding Hua told them to let him go, because his uncle was the head of the health department. And the guy said, even if he were the governor, no one could save him today. Entering the interrogation room, he saw his uncle and asked what was going on and asked him to tell them to release him. Hearing this, he slapped him in the face and said that if he wanted to die, he shouldn't drag his relatives into it, and asked if he understood what would happen to them because of him. But the guy didn't let them finish and pushed him so he wouldn't keep him waiting. Entering the interrogation room, he asked on what grounds they had arrested him and what law he had broken, to which the main character replied that only the grave could straighten a hunchback. After that, he threw a tablet at his feet and said, "You thought you destroyed all the recordings from the hospital cameras, but now take a look at this." It showed Dean Hua injecting some kind of medicine into the patient's IV. But the guy didn't understand how he could have erased everything. It was impossible. Then the main character told the guy that he was all his and asked him to treat this case with all seriousness in order to calm the soul of the innocent victim, to which he replied that he should not worry, because he had enough power to carry out his execution today. Hearing this, Dinghua fell to his knees and began to beg for mercy. But Ye Feng asked him about the patient, who also wanted to live, and the guy said he was ready to pay compensation to his family and give them all his money. After that, the Dragon Lord kicked him and said that human life was priceless and that he could only pay for the murder of an innocent person with his own life. Then the guy ordered him to be taken to the dungeon. After that, the main character hoped that they would be able to shed light on what had happened to the public, to which he told him not to worry about it, because he would sort everything out. As he was leaving the interrogation room, a tearful Su Yun called him and said that these people were unbearable and she couldn't stay here any longer. She asked him to take her and her mother away from here, as she wanted to return to Jiangdu. He told her not to worry, that he would come right away. When he arrived at the Yang family residence, the main character was stopped by a security guard who asked if he knew where he was, because outsiders were not allowed here, and ordered him to leave. But he said that he understood perfectly well that this was the Yang family residence, and that Yang Tingshun was his fiancé's grandfather, and asked if he could now enter. The guard just smiled maliciously, and asked if he couldn't think of anything better, because he needed to assess his chances realistically, as he would never find a girl like that. After that, Ye Feng hit the guard. Hearing the sound, some guys came running and asked who he was and what he was doing there. The main character told them that he was there to take his bride, Su Yun, and his mother-in-law, and that he would leave as soon as he achieved his goal. The guy just asked if he was from the Yuan family in the capital. But the Dragon Lord did not understand what other Yuan family there was, and said that he was mistaken. To which the guy replied that he had just found out that Su Yun's engagement ceremony was taking place today, and decided to cause trouble to get into the news headlines. The main character did not understand whether the Yang family had decided to force Su Yun into marriage. He said that such twists were starting to annoy him. Ye Feng viciously told him to get out of his way. Approaching his father, the young man said that he had no idea Su Yun had grown up to be so charming. He added that just one photo of her had delighted the young master of the Yuan family, to which his father replied that he was sorry that only the Yuan family had taken the bait, because if it had been the Lin family from the capital, the family's status could have risen much higher. He then asked where the guest of honor was. The young man said that he had already sent for her recently, but she had not shown up, which meant that he would go and fetch her himself. Wang Chen took her by the hand and led her into his father's room. He said that she shouldn't have kept her uncle waiting, then he wouldn't have had to drag her here by force, to which the girl replied that they were just using her to earn money for their family's status. After she said that, he slapped her in the face and ordered her to be quiet. Then a guy came into the room and said that some guy named Ye Feng was trying to get to them. Hearing this, the girl ran to the main character, and her uncle said that it would be better to settle all problems before Mr. Yuan arrived. As soon as Su Yun saw the Dragon Lord, she immediately threw herself into his arms. Seeing the mark of a blow on his bride, the god of war asked who had hit her. After his words, the girl's uncle said that he had hit her, and he asked if he would now hit him in return.